what I did on Wednesday was I started to incorporate the triads in a diatonic scale, in a scale, meaning I went from one triad to the next triad in a major scale. So instead of just playing C major, C minor, C augmented, C diminished, I went up the scale, C, D, E, F. And if I do that in the natural scale, it will always produce these triads. First triad is major. And then what I opted to do is to give you a minor triad that had a slightly different fingering, and that's why I want you to be able to see this. What I did was then I started on the next note in the scale, which is D, and I built a minor triad from it. And that was D, F, A, F, D. But it looks like this shape. 4, 2, 1, 2, 4. So we have major, and then a minor triad. Okay? And that shape was a new shape for you, and so that's why I wanted to make this video so you could see it. The next chord going up the scale is an E. And what I did was I played this same shape, a minor shape, up higher because I knew that it would be a shape that you already knew. I went up to another E, which is the 7th fret of the 5th string. And I created another minor triad. 4, 2, 1, 2, 4. So then I had this. C major, C major 3rd and a perfect 5th. D minor, starting on the 5th fret. Then I did E minor, which is the 3rd chord in the key of C. And you can see I just moved up the neck. Then I went to the next chord, which would have started on F. Here's your F. And F produces a major triad. So then I used the same fingering that we did for C. But I started on F, which is the 3rd fret of the 4th string. So then if we go in a row, C major, D minor, E minor, F major, so C, D, E, F. Next chord would be based on G. There's G, and I move the major pattern because it's going to be a G major. I went up to the 5th fret of the 4th string and did a major shape. So then what I did was I had done, it has given you 5 chords, 5 triads in the key of C, one chord after another on consecutive scale degrees. C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, and that's as far as I went on Wednesday. I did transpose it, meaning I tried that on different keys, and I know some of you got it, but I think it was moving too fast. That was a lot of information. So at any rate, that's something I'll talk about later. I would like to add 2 more triads because I'd like to finish the scale. The last chord you played was G, which is the 5th. The last chord. The next note would be an A, everybody. And instead of going that high to start it, I'm going to kind of go backwards and go to a very low A. Remember that this is the relative minor too, A minor. And so I'm going to start on this A, 5th fret of the 6th string, with the 4th finger, because what I'm going to try to make, or what I'm going to make, is an A minor triad. 4th finger, 2nd finger, 1st finger. triad. So that's the 6th chord, which is minor, of C. So we have C, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, switching to A minor on the low end. One more chord left, and that's the only naturally occurring diminished chord. And so for that, remember that you have to have a minor 3rd and a diminished 5th. And so the fingering on the way that we were fingering it originally in the book was this. Sorry, we have to do it in minor. It had a fingering that went like this for C diminished. So I have to alter that in order for it to fit in C major. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take first finger on B, because that's the 7th degree. That's almost the last degree of the octave before it gets to the octave. And I'm going to turn it into a diminished triad, and this diminished triad is going to be first finger, 4th finger, which makes a minor 3rd, and then I'm going to use 2nd finger on the next string, 4th string, 3rd fret, which makes it a diminished 5th. So diminished triad in this fingering sounds like this. Creates this chord. So that would be the completion of the scale, because once you do this, you're going to go back to C major. You've done all the chords in the key of C major. C, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, switching down to A minor, B diminished, and back to C. So those are all the triads, major and minor and diminished, in a major key. Lots of things compressed all into one. And I would like everybody to be able to play that in the key of C. Now that's transposable, meaning that you can do that in any key, provided you know where you're starting. And I'll go over that with you guys too. One thing I also wanted to add, we skipped unit number 11 because in my estimation it's a pretty simple unit, but I would like to discuss it so at least you have some review materials about it. It's about inversions of intervals. And an inversion is just when you take whatever happens to be your arrangement of notes, the bottom note and the top note, and reverse them. So what ends up happening is the top note, or rather the bottom note then can be placed up above the former top note. And so what you've done is you've inverted it. So now what used to previously be the top note now ends up being the bottom note. That's called an inversion of an interval. And inversions are very important in music because we use them to make chords sound a little bit more interesting when you invert the chord itself. So the simplest way to invert something is to actually use math. What you do is, everything is, you can subtract any interval from 9, and that will get you its number in an inversion. So you can take a second and subtract it from 9. 9 minus 2 equals 7. So that means a second will always invert as a 7th. And the other way around. If it was a 7th, 9 minus 7 minus 2, it becomes a second. That's what happens to the notes. So a 4th becomes a 5th. A 6th becomes a 3rd. Anything subtractable by 9. So the number is easy. Then the next step is, you know that every interval has a interval quality: major, minor, diminished, augmented. So this one's pretty simple too. Because perfect intervals, if they're perfect going one way, they're perfect when they're inverted. Maybe that's why they're called perfect. They invert as the same perfect interval. A perfect 5th becomes a perfect fourth when you invert it. So that's a good rule about perfect intervals. Then, a major interval becomes its opposite. It becomes minor, going the other direction. So a major second becomes a minor seventh. Same way, a minor interval becomes major, just the opposite. Same with diminished and augmented intervals. A diminished interval becomes an augmented interval, and an augmented interval becomes diminished. So everything is opposite with majors and minors, and diminished and augmented. You're expanding and retracting. Perfect intervals remain perfect. And that's it for inversion of intervals, everybody. With those simple rules, you can invert any interval that I give you. And that's it, everybody. I just wanted to be able to make sure that you could see me physically playing these chords because, or the triads, because there isn't a exact reference in the textbook. So I'm providing everybody with a DVD of this, and in addition to that, I'm going to be supplying this on Blackboard and also on my own website. Okay? So that's it. Signing out.